Oh, we are back. It is a Monday here on Believe in White Sox, the official White Sox podcast of the Believe Network. We only did one show last week, but you know what, folks? Let's just be honest with you. The less we talk about the White Sox at this point in time, the better. But you know what? At the end of the day, we're still here to deliver you a product, even if it's not as frequent as we would like it to be. We're not holding off on recordings because we don't have the time to do them. Trust me, I'm always going to make the time to do them. But we're holding off just because how often can you talk about the pathetic nature of this team? It's quite simply put, you've had enough. Enough is enough at a certain point, and we still need to give you the duties. The White Sox are back in the Bay Area. They are starting a 3-game series tonight down at Oracle Park against the San Francisco Giants. I am not going to be going tonight, but I will probably be going on Wednesday, and most definitely am going to be going on, or rather, what is today's date? Today's Monday. I'll probably go tomorrow night, and I'm definitely going to go on Wednesday. Garrett Crochet against Logan Webb. Too bad that Crochet is going to be on an innings limit, but the White Sox made history in that in their series down in Houston over the weekend, they lost 2 of 3. They're now 30-95. The White Sox have been eliminated officially. All the mathematical possibilities, they have been eliminated from postseason contention. That happened on Saturday. And and I want to make sure that I attribute it to the right person, per Jessica Brand, who is a sports bookmaker and a baseball reference ambassador, but I am getting this as a quote tweet from a man by the name of Jason Hernandez. August 17th is the earliest calendar date in the divisional era. So not just the wild card, but in the time that they have had just straight up divisions, because back in the day there was the East and the West, and in the divisional era, it's the earliest that any team has ever been eliminated from playoff contention. We said it that the White Sox could be at 100 losses before August. And look, you look at where the calendar is at this point, including tonight, the White Sox have 12 games left in the month of August. If they are under 100 losses by the time the calendar hits September 1st, something very weird happened. And probably something very weird happened in a good way, meaning the team is starting to perform a little bit. And there were some encouraging signs over the weekend. You know, the White Sox, they did only score 2 combined runs, or rather 1 combined run in their 2 losses on Saturday and Sunday at the Astros. They did win 5-4 on Friday night. White Sox lost 4-1 to the Yankees at home on Wednesday. Aaron Judge in that game became the quickest player in Major League history to reach 300 career home runs. That's in terms of games played and at bats. So the White Sox on the bad side of history in that one. Ky Busch was finally starting to look a little bit better in his start yesterday against the Astros. He went 6 innings, allowed just 1 run on 4 hits, walked 3, struck out 5. So at least the walks are starting to come down, and that's a sign of progress for him. But look, this is just a team, and Miguel Vargas, unfortunately, he's been bad. He has been really, really bad since he has come to Chicago. He's hitting just 183 as a member of the White Sox, and this is just a team that's filled with 200 to 240 hitters. And I don't know how much more we can really run the gamut on what the White Sox are in this iteration of them, but at least you're starting to see a little bit more inspired play. I think that the managerial change, just having the different voice in the room, is going to end up being beneficial in terms of the attitude that you see from some of these guys moving forward. Now, with that being said, it's still a lost season, and I don't think Grady Sizemore is going to have a chance in getting this managerial job full time. They have said as much, so he's basically trying out to be a coach somewhere next year. I hope that the White Sox don't do what they always do and retain a pitching coach or retain a hitting coach, or at least up until this past year, retain Daryl Boston for whatever the heck Daryl Boston does standing over at first base. So the White Sox, they're a team that, and look, I think that the Houston series, in terms of the conjecture I saw on White Sox Twitter, going down to Minute Maid Park is always a bittersweet event for them because the Astros were the last team that they faced in the playoffs when they lost in 4 games in 2021. They lost both games in Houston, won the blackout game in game 3, and then lost game 4, in which Carlos Rodon started. But then you also talk about 2005 and going down there and winning the World Series and winning two of the most thrilling games. The 14 inning game where Jeff Blum hit the go ahead home run. It's funny that Jeff Blum is now the main TV analyst for Astros TV broadcasts. And then the 1-0 game that Jermaine Dye singled in Willie Harris. Willie Harris now a third base coach for the Cubs. So it's funny how a lot of that comes full circle. But, you know, this is a Houston team that got off to a bad start. They are now more than likely going to win the American League West because Seattle has completely fallen apart. Their offense is just as bad, if not worse, than that of the White Sox. And look, this Houston team, it's kind of sad when I think about the fact that they are better without Jose Abreu, that somebody that White Sox fans hold near and dear to their hearts is no longer a part of the team that he left the White Sox to go sign, and that team was struggling with him there and is now thriving with him gone. So, and quite frankly, and I know we've talked about this before, I think that's probably the last that we've seen or will see of Jose Abreu in a major league uniform. It would be nice. Maybe he signs a 1-day contract with the White Sox after the season is over. He can retire with the White Sox. I think that would be the right thing for the organization to do. I don't think they're necessarily going to do it, but you have to hope that they'll do right by somebody that did right by the organization through a lot of really bad years. Now, what we're looking for in terms of the rest of this season for the White Sox, I think, is can Lenyn Sosa be an everyday player? Can Dominic Fletcher be an everyday player? Is there a future for Gavin Sheets? Is Corey Lee this team's everyday catcher of the future? Because in the second segment that we're going to have today is going to talk about White Sox prospects and where we see a lot of them fitting in moving forward, because MLB Pipeline just did their reclassified top 100 list, and there's a couple of really interesting names on there. Is Corey Lee going to be the guy that you put in there and say, hey, you're the guy behind the plate, you're going to catch 115 games a year, go at it. This is your job. So, and it's funny, Corey Lee is somebody that came from the Astros organization. I think he came from the Astros organization. I don't know why I can't necessarily remember. Yep, he did come from the Astros organization. Why can't I remember the trade that they got him in? Maybe it says at the bottom of his. Oh, that's right. That was the trade last year before the deadline that sent Kendall Graveman back to Houston for his second stint with the Astros. So Corey Lee hopefully can establish himself as the everyday guy, and he has started to find his own. Granted, he's still only hitting 214, but 10 homers, 28 runs batted in, 95 strikeouts and 294 bats. Not great, but there needs to be some signs of progress, or at least signs of progress that we see. I don't know. I'm trying to look at the positives of what's on this current roster. I think Luis Robert is a guy that has killed his own value, unfortunately. Andrew Benintendi is starting to hit a little bit, but again, how do you describe things as good when your ceiling of good is Andrew Vaughn at 242? Now, the San Francisco Giants are a team that really struggles offensively. They're a very good rotation, but they are not a clutch offensive team. They ended up splitting their 2-game weekend series over in Oakland. They got shut out in the Saturday game, and then they were held to just 1 run through 9 innings yesterday, and then they ended up scoring three in the 10th inning to end up winning that game 4-2, and they barely got out of a bases loaded jam with one out in the bottom of the 10th inning. A's probably could have tied the game, but Ryan Walker, who's now the Giants closer, replacing Camilo Doval, ends up making a really good set of pitches to get San Francisco out of that jam. So I'm hopeful to be down there at some point, maybe tomorrow night, possibly Wednesday. I know I guaranteed one and said the other, but the White Sox are back in the Bay Area for what will be the last time this year. It was weird that they were here basically under 2 weeks ago. The way that the schedule has really evened itself out, it's been very strange watching these teams go back to the same locations. Yeah, they were here less than 2 weeks ago. So, um, not a lot of winning for the White Sox, and 100 losses is certainly on the horizon. So, hopefully, there are some signs of things to come, and the future is the focus of the White Sox at this point. So, over the weekend, MLB Pipeline released their new reclassified list of their top 100 prospects, and the White Sox have four of them. Their number one prospect overall in the system, not just the White Sox, but overall, is Jackson Holliday. And even though he is at the big league level because he's been up and down, he is still being classified as a prospect. Now, you go down the list, and the number one White Sox prospect is Noah Schultz. He is listed as the number 15 overall prospect and the number one left-handed pitcher in all of MLB Pipeline's system. Number 28 overall on the list is Colson Montgomery, and then Hagen Smith, number 32 overall, him having just been drafted out of Arkansas. And then at number 63 is Edgar Quero. So if you want to go by position, and we'll classify that here. Went to first base by mistake, but Quero at this point is the number 9 catching prospect in all of baseball at this point. Samuel Basallo, who's at AA for the Orioles, he is the number 1 in that spot. Shortstop, Colson Montgomery is, and this is interesting because of who I mentioned was ahead of him, or rather, a guy that I wanted them to draft. Colson Montgomery at AAA is ranked as the number 7 shortstop among all prospects. JJ Weatherholt, who is currently in A-ball with the St. Louis Cardinals, the number 7 overall pick in the MLB draft, he is the number 5 shortstop prospect. Interesting, they don't classify Travis Bazzana at shortstop. They classify him at second base, but actually he is a second baseman. I don't know what I'm talking about here. But Travis Bazzana is the number 2 ranked second baseman. And then, if you want to talk about left-handed pitchers, Noah Schultz is the number 1 lefty prospect, and Hagen Smith is the number 2 lefty prospect. The top 5 are Thomas White of the Miami Marlins, who is in high A, Quinn Matthews, former Stanford Cardinal, who is with the Cardinals at AA, and Jackson Ferris of the Dodgers, who is also in AA as well. Now, if you want to look at the top 30 by team, in terms of guys that you should expect to see pretty soon, the ETA dates for each of the top 5 White Sox prospects are all 2025 or earlier. The top 5 in this order are Schultz, Montgomery, Smith, Quero, and then Jairo Iriarte, who is currently a right-handed pitcher at AA Birmingham. Grant Taylor is an A-ball. His arrival is not scheduled until 2027. He's the number 6 overall prospect. Brooks Baldwin is still on this list. He is listed at number 8. Kai Bush is also still on this list. He's listed at number 10. Caleb Bonnemer, the second-round draft pick out of Okemos, Michigan, he's listed at number 11 at the moment. And a couple other guys that are of note, Brian Ramos, who I think is going to end up making his major league debut at some point in September. He's at AAA. He's the number 13 ranked prospect. Ural Perez and Alex Albertus, the 2 guys that were received back in the Michael Kopech and Eric Fetty. Why can't I remember? And the Tommy Pham deal. The guys that got back from the Dodgers. I don't know why my brain is deciding to abandon me at the most important time in the podcast. They are ranked 14th and 15th. Nick Nastrini, who has made a couple of appearances with the big club, he is ranked number 18 on this list. And In terms of other guys, there's not a whole lot of other guys that you expect to debut before 2026, but that's where the White Sox stand in terms of their prospects. I'll be very curious to see who debuts first. Hagen Smith as an experienced college arm who was taken fifth overall, or Noah Schultz, a high school arm who has progressed his way up the system. People are very excited about Noah Schultz, and I understand why. He's got the stuff that people think is to die for. But I actually haven't had a chance to look too in depth at Noah Schultz's actual stats at this point. Colson Montgomery's stats are fine. They're not, we've gone over them before. They're fine. They're not great, but I think a lot of people like Noah Schultz because of the fact that he's a Chicago guy. He's from Oswego, Illinois, went to Oswego East High School. And in Birmingham this year, he's been awesome. Now that I actually look at his stats, a 1.59 ERA in 12 starts, 45 and a third innings of work, 52 strikeouts to just 14 walks. And in high A Winston-Salem, he had a 3.95 ERA in his first 7 starts. So he's actually gotten better since he has gone from the Carolina League up to the Southern League. So the White Sox, there are prospects aplenty. Interesting that Oscar Colas is no longer listed on the prospect list, but I think that for a lot of people with Colas, the ship has unfortunately sailed in his regard. So I think that the opportunity to actually see him as a productive White Sox player is probably long since past, but there's excitement to be had when looking at these prospect lists. But one of the things that I think it helps us focus in on is, all right, are the 4 guys in the top 100 going to end up being guys that are contributors on the next contending team? Schultz and Smith are assumingly 2 of the starting pitchers that are a part of the next competitive White Sox rotation. We don't know about Garrett Crochet at this point. That's still the big unknown in terms of whether he's here next year or the year after that. Then we also have to talk about what it is the White Sox are going to end up doing with Corey Lee and whether Edgar Cuero is going to end up being the next best catching prospect or whether somebody gets moved somewhere. And then how good Colson Montgomery actually is. And I think once we see Colson Montgomery and we see Brian Ramos, we'll see maybe there's an infield where you got Ramos at third and you've got Montgomery at short, Baldwin at second base, Miguel Vargas is playing somewhere in the outfield. Maybe there's something to be had. I'm not sure if necessarily we are going to see this iteration of prospects all come together at the same time, but at least there's something to look forward to, especially on the pitching end. And I think that the White Sox, as they've always done, despite the regime change, their philosophy is develop pitching from within and build on the margins with position players. I think they need to do a better job of developing position players, but we'll see if there are any other trades to be had in the offseason that will bring back prospects on the position player side. But we'll see, based on what the opening day roster is in 2025, if any of the guys on the current team or any of the prospects at AAA, the Montgomerys and the Ramoses of the world, are a part of that opening day roster next year. And that will give us an idea in terms of who the White Sox see as building blocks moving forward. And we'll see if there's any value on the trade market for Andrew Vaughn or Luis Robert, because the more and more that I think about it, the more and more it might just be better for them to move on and go to new places. But if the goal was to move on from Andrew Vaughn, why didn't they draft Jack Caglianone? The world may never know, like they always talk about a Tootsie Pop. That's it. That's all for this edition of Believe in White Sox. We will hopefully be back with you at some point during the middle of the Giants series. If not, when the White Sox end up returning home to square up with the Detroit Tigers on Elvis night on Friday. Thanks, everybody.